Welcome to the Three Things Podcast. I'm David Iglesias, Director of Wheaton Center for Faith, Politics, and Economics. You may be wondering why this podcast is called Three Things. You were probably taught by your parents, like I was, that it was impolite to talk to people about three things: religion, politics, and money. But what happens if your job is to talk about those three things? Well, let's find out. Joining me today in the Three Things podcast is Jeff Parnell. Jeff is president and CEO of FishUSA Incorporated, an online retailer of fishing products. FishUSA markets primarily freshwater angling products. Immediately prior to joining FishUSA, he was executive director at the Erie Technology Incubator at Gannon University, where he mentored more than 30 technology startups and served as an adjunct professor at the university's business school. After 12 years in the catalog industry, he joined Blair Corporation in 2000, where he launched and drove the company's e-commerce sales to $100 million. He has a BS in business and an MBA from East Carolina University, is married to Karen Parnell, and is a Wheaton father. Jeff has an amazing personal story to tell of a near-fatal medical condition, a Wheaton-educated doctor who helped him regain his health, and how the experience has shaped his life and approach to leadership. Jeff, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Love the podcast, and it's really terrific to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. First of all, how did a guy from the Carolinas get in the freshwater angling business? I've been all over both Carolinas, and all I can think of is the wonderful Atlantic coastline.
Sure, and I lived not too far from the Atlantic coast. It's a beautiful country. I grew up in the eastern third of the state, loving sports and all kinds of outdoor activities. And basically what happened with me is after grad school, I became the first ever marketing employee by a catalog company called Overton's back in my hometown of Greenville, North Carolina. This was the late 80s. I already had a love for direct marketing and catalogs in general, but I could not have known more than 30 years ago this kind of background would propel me forward. I had no job description in my first position with Overton's other than make the numbers work. And that ended up propelling me into very much what I do today.
Wonderful. Well, I'm a catalog enthusiast, been a longtime recipient of LL Bean and Land's End and Orvis. So I know that world, and I'm a fan of catalogs. Let me tell you, I feel like maybe our great grandparents when they got the Sears Roebuck catalog many years ago. So let me ask you this. Are you an angler, or should I say fisherman?
Well, we use both almost interchangeably. I've always kind of felt angler is a little more reserved for someone who's more serious. So I would say I'm a very casual fisherman. My kids have always loved fishing. What really drew me to FishUSA more than anything was just a passion that I have for marketing and for growing businesses. I consulted with them for 8 months and just fell in love with the business, really bonded with the owner and the entire team. And then when there was an opportunity to become their first CEO, my wife and I prayed about it, felt, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be. So that's how that all kind of unfolded. It's some like to talk about the fact that I'm not that avid angler out on the water, but you know what? I'm a business person. I
understand that. And I also understand that FishUSA's primary market focus has been the Great Lakes region. How did this come about?
Well, we've got a super talented team, really from the very top down. The ownership down includes a number of avid anglers. Lake Erie is our home base. Lake Ontario, a lot of folks fish up there as well, not to mention the streams as well. But we're a Lake Erie, Great Lakes kind of company. You know, you go in business with what you're passionate about and what you know. That's your strength. That's how that kind of got unfolded.
There's a real culture of respecting the Great Lakes here. When I moved back to the Great Lakes region a number of years ago from the Southwest, I kept seeing these weird symbols on the backs of people's windshields, and I knew it was a map of something, and then I figured it out. It was all 5 Great Lakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess that means they're a fan, and I am too. Can you tell us how the Great Lakes are doing ecologically?
Well, I think they've been on the comeback trail in a lot of ways. They're much stronger ecologically. The fisheries in our region are some of the best in America. And the ecology plays a part in that. We take it seriously. You cannot be in this industry and not care about the environment and the water. And FishUSA, I can tell you, does take it very seriously. We've got people who volunteer. Our chairman, owner, serves on the PA Fish Commission. So this is all very important to us.
Well, that's wonderful. As a kid, I probably read National Geographic for 20 years. My parents were subscribed for, I think, about 40 years. And I remember reading many years ago that the Great Lakes were either the first or the second largest amount of fresh water on planet Earth. Is that a correct remembrance?
To my understanding, yes, that's correct.
Amazing. I also remember when the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught fire in the late 1960s due to the massive amount of industrial waste in the water. Do you remember that?
I do. It happened in 1969. That was kind of an interesting backdrop for the entire region, and Cleveland in particular. You know, that river flows right through the heart of downtown.
Yes.
Yes, it's still talked about. I subscribe to some Cleveland publications, and it still comes up to this day, anniversaries, et cetera. So a big deal, but that community and the Great Lakes in general have certainly moved forward.
In fact, I just read in the newspaper recently that they caught a 100-year-old sturgeon that was something like 240 pounds, not too far from Cleveland. I'm sure you've read about that as well.
Absolutely, yes. You see this from time to time throughout the Great Lakes.
Tell me about how you've expanded your market reach.
So, yeah, as we talked about, we are Great Lakes born and bred as a company. So the traditional focus has been on freshwater species such as walleye, trout, salmon, and steelhead. We've expanded into some other areas over the past several years. The single largest category in freshwater is bass.
Huh.
So we were deliberate about jumping into that market, but we're in there now. And that correlates closely with the fishing kayak category, because a lot of those anglers are bass fishermen. So those are some of the areas we've moved into. In addition, we've accelerated our growth over the last number of years in ice fishing. That's something a lot of people don't know a lot about. It's not done, obviously, in much of the country, but in the Great Lakes, upper Midwest, and even further west, the Great Plains, it's a big deal, and we're very strong there.
I've actually seen some ice fishing as I run in the park where I run in the colder months. Occasionally, I'll see a guy out on the ice. For hours. It's really remarkable.
These guys are serious. You've got the huts. You've got, very high-end and powerful augers, and they take it seriously. They will stay overnight in many cases. They'll camp on the ice when it's right. They sure will.
That's a hardy breed of people. Tell me about the status of the angling market. Is it growing?
It is growing. It's been growing significantly and already, or steadily, I should say, but solid double digits over the past year, which I know we're going to talk about probably in a few minutes in terms of what's been driving that.
Absolutely. And as somebody who was raised on a tropical island in the Caribbean, my knowledge of freshwater fishing is limited. Can you explain how the business side differs from saltwater fishing?
Sure. From a product assortment standpoint, if you're a saltwater fisherman, you're dealing with the corrosive effects of salt, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, you've got to have a different type of rod, reel, line. The lures are larger. Essentially, they're heavier duty. They're more expensive. So that's one little piece right there from a physical standpoint. Also, psychographically, many in the industry refer to freshwater fishing as being more relaxing. You're out there for hours at a time. Not that our customers, who we call avids, that's an industry name that's often used. These are serious fishermen. But you know what? There's more of a relaxing feel to being out on the lake, on the stream, as opposed to someone out, offshore trying to grab a marlin.
It's funny you'd say that, because I just reread The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway about a month ago, and it was every bit as good as I remembered it. Although the ending is really sad. I'm not going to ruin it in case any of our listeners haven't read it, but
Sure.
What an amazing book. Let me ask you about the pandemic. How did it affect FishUSA?
Well, we had to prepare a lot internally, and we took it very seriously beginning in March of 21, when the news was starting to come out. But from a business and growth perspective, it actually accelerated growth.
Wow.
A lot of physical pro shops across the country were shut down. A lot of people were without work. You had stimulus checks flying around, but also fishing is really the ideal social distancing and relaxing kind of activity. And what better kinds of themes or narratives could you have during a pandemic? So to be honest, the supply chain has been a disaster in our industry, with a lot of the even larger companies struggling to catch up. But no, it's been a record last 12, 14, 15 months in terms of growth.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. How will the return to normalcy, whatever that means, affect FishUSA's and your industry's growth in general?
Yeah, well, ultimately, the supply chain's got to catch up. It's not going to catch up in the next few months, we don't believe. We think there'll be some settling down. We think the industry, however, can be very well positioned. The beauty of this is we've had a large number of first-time anglers who've discovered the sport out of necessity. And if we can convince these newcomers to not only continue enjoying the activity, but become passionate or avid about it, then there's a lot of customers out there for all of us in the industry.
Well, and as you know, this podcast is three things. And one of those three things is faith, Christian faith, to be specific. And I know you're a Christ follower like I am. Let me ask you this question about Jesus and his original disciples. He picked a lot of fishermen for his original group of disciples. Have you ever thought about why he did that? Any truths you can glean from that?
Yeah, I have. That's a great question. And I guess a couple things come to mind. First of all, fishing requires patience. Just like spiritual growth requires patience. We'd love to see growth immediately. We get saved, or we really study, we get mentored, and we want to see the growth the minute it happens. It doesn't work that way usually. Fishing's the same way. You learn your craft over time, you get better. Also, something that was interesting to me about the correlation, as I've been thinking about it over the years, is quite often unconventional approaches bear great fruit. What did Jesus say? Throw your net on the other side.
Yes.
That's many cases what, our customers are always looking for, the next great way to catch. That's exactly what Jesus has done. It wasn't always as someone might write it up, but it worked.
Wow. So it sounds like your business was doing well, and then something huge happened in your life. Your business was growing, but I understand you had a huge health issue. Can you tell us more about what happened?
Yes, I'm happy to. And, it's something, David, when we first talked, I agreed to have this conversation. It's something I thought and prayed a lot about, but I'm now eager to become more out in the open. I mean, it's not a deep, dark secret to my friends, family, and to my company by any means. But what basically happened is, I had a life-changing experience in early 2018. My heart had been gradually weakening. I went in for an appointment with my cardiologist and the team there at Cleveland Clinic, world-class facility, in January of 18, first part of the year. They ran some tests, and I asked if our work was done today, and then they told me, you're not ready to go home. And that was essentially a major shock. But the bigger shock was when I said, well, how long would I be there? Their answer was, we don't know.
Oh, boy.
So that was kind of the start of my journey without a whole lot of prep time.
Now, previously, had you been in good health? Because you're still a relatively young man.
Yes, I had been in good health. My heart had been gradually weakening over the last number of years, but it did not really inhibit most of what I did. You don't envision yourself kind of lining up for something dramatic in terms of heart surgery. That's exactly what happened.
Do you have any idea how your heart was damaged?
It's funny what the Cleveland Clinic, like any world-class facility, they're going to run a battery of tests, and I've had a number of them conducted over the years. And the medical answer was, I call it a virus. Believe it or not, a virus of the heart. And that's actually not as rare as it might sound.
Oh, my.
But somewhere along the way, something got into my heart, and it gradually, over time, slowly weakened it year by year.
I've never heard of that. I've got a lot of friends who are medical doctors, as I'm sure you do too, but I have never heard of that. But when it blew, so to speak, it obviously was an emergency. It's something you could not just ignore.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're telling me you're staying here for a while. They wouldn't tell me how long, and then the test just continued and accelerated from there.
What was their treatment eventually?
Well, what happened is one thing led to another. They put a device in me called an LVAD, which is a left ventricle assisted device. And that I had just been put on the heart transplant list. That's when that started really coming about in terms of the serious aspect of this. They put the LVAD in me, and what happened is that moves you up on the list into a more prominent position. There are lots of people on the list, but I now moved to the top status when that happened. So I was getting weaker by the day at this point. But then all of a sudden, we're talking transplant possibilities.
Jeff, dumb question, but could you feel yourself getting weaker every day?
As I stop and think about it, I could. It's not like I would wake up on Monday and feel, well, I'm weaker than yesterday generally. But as I started thinking about what was going on a month ago or 6 months ago, yes, I was starting to feel it. My wife was a much better judge of this because she'd see me, if I had a job to do, I went in the office, I did my job and didn't wear it there. I usually would come home and crash. And apparently, according to my amazing wife, Karen, that was becoming more common, in terms of just taking it easier when I got home at night so I could suit up for battle the next day.
And what about climbing upstairs? Would that be more difficult with each passing month?
Gradually, not a great deal. It was really more, I guess the way God made me. I've always felt I had things to get done. And so I pushed through. I mean, this was going to be, I had a family to take care of and a job to do. I love what I do for a living. And, it never really slowed me down from that standpoint. So when I got home, then I was just in a mode where I needed to take it easy.
Now, was there a Wheaton connection with regards to your treatment for your damaged heart?
There was. One of the coolest things. I mean, I was in the Cleveland Clinic for a total of 5 weeks from start to the end of the journey. But yes, there was. Dr. Tim Raymond was the cardiologist's name. He's from a cardiology family. Just a great guy, Wheaton grad. We talked a lot about the Lord and Wheaton. He was thankfully one of the people on rotation with me quite a bit. And, what was even more interesting there is when it became time for me to actually get on the transplant list, he volunteered and asked to be the one to pitch me to the committee, the people who decide, yes, he's worthy.
Wow.
And he called my wife on her cell phone. She had just left my room early evening and said, just so you know, I'm pitching Jeff tomorrow morning. So very cool. Tim's a great guy, just a beautiful person.
How rare are heart transplants today?
It's funny. Cleveland Clinic, the main campus, does about 50 a year.
Oh my, that's about one a week.
That's about one a week. I know the gentleman who received a transplant the day after me in 2018, but it could often be a couple more weeks before someone else comes along. But actually in 2020, they hit their 2,000 barrier. And then the last number I saw was around 3,500, 4,000 transplants a year, heart transplants in the U.S. So frankly, they're not that common.
Yeah, that's incredible. I had no idea. And how long did it take you to get your heart transplant?
Well, basically, from the time I was on the list, it was about 2 weeks.
That sounds really fast, Jeff. Is it?
It absolutely was. It was a miracle that it happened that quickly. The LVAD moved me up the list, but still, that's no guarantee.
Right. And what effect did that miraculous provision of a heart have on your faith?
Well, it's funny. Beyond the sheer miracle of a heart, that really made me start feeling 20 years younger, almost from the time I woke up. The real miracle was that I was on the list. As I said, I was on the list for only a couple of weeks. They told me, you got a great heart, one that matched me perfectly. And it was an absolute God thing that all of this happened. And I'll tell anybody who will listen that very thing. So that's how it started to impact me as a person and also from a faith perspective.
What about your business? I mean, clearly it affected your family and it must have had some effect on your business practice.
Well, it really did. And I guess I'll make one more quick comment on the faith side. You can't help but think how blessed you are. And when you think of the people who are not as fortunate, how that affected business is we've got, as I've said, an amazing team of smart, very dedicated people. The chairman of the company, so many others stood with me while I was in the hospital. Working on the laptop in the hospital was real therapy. And it gave me a perspective here. I try not to be overly dramatic, but I can honestly tell someone in a meeting that, you know what, this business challenge is a piece of cake compared to what other people have to deal with, right? I mean, again, I'm trying not to wear it, but it's a huge issue. And also, I'll say, just the ongoing aspect of resilience. My wife, Karen, she's the same way, incredibly resilient woman. She's told me quite a bit my faith, resilience, and strength are stronger than ever because of the fight that I won. It's funny. We all have these little things we may or may not like to talk about, but I'm a huge Rocky movie fan.
Oh yeah.
I consider myself to be the underdog fighter. So even though I don't have any Italian blood in me, I love Rocky Balboa.
That's a classic set of movies. I think the first one's the best, but they all have good things to show us.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. How do you view your life differently now that you've come so close to death?
Everybody always says, very cliche-ish, but life is short. I know that firsthand. I can tell you, Karen and I never stopped believing this was going to work out beautifully when we got to the other side. She'll tell you when they rolled me away, on a Saturday afternoon when the call came that I had a new heart, we were elated. But when they rolled me away to the room the next day, I was excited. I was weak, but I was spiritually and emotionally excited. So you appreciate things more than ever. A rainy day is a beautiful day. A sunny day is a beautiful day. A bitterly cold day, another gorgeous day, right?
Yeah. Now, were you scared when they wheeled you away?
No, I was excited.
Wow.
I couldn't wait. I was the night before, they came in on a Saturday afternoon and they said, we've got a heart for you and we're going to get you at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Well, it turned out to be about 1 p.m., I believe, but I couldn't sleep the night before, not because I was scared, but because I was just excited. I was saying, come on, hurry up, 10 a.m.
Yes.
Let's get me down there to get this thing done. But no, I was excited. I had the Lord on my side. I had, my wife, who's an amazing Proverbs 31 woman, and just I'm married way over my head. I had family. Same. I had friends. I had frankly, I had the folks at FishUSA who are rooting for me, and others rooting for me. People from my past I reached out to. So no, I couldn't wait to get to the other side, as they say.
What was your biggest takeaway from this ordeal?
Don't lose sight of this. Don't lose sight of God and what he can do. Life can be challenging, but he calls us to be confident winners. And we can take great comfort in knowing that he never leaves us. Amen.
Any verses from scripture that you clung to during your health emergency?
Yes, absolutely. One goes to back to my senior year of high school. My basketball coach, our team verse was Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. I've clung to that one forever. Great. The other one that came up, and it's kind of funny. This is kind of ironic, but I mentioned Tim Raymond being such an amazing brother. 2 Timothy 2:17. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And I felt the power. I never felt fearful. I felt tired. I felt, beaten up, but never fearful.
That's perfect. That is Timothy, because your doctor's first name was Timothy. That's wonderful. Wait, what do you have to say to fellow followers of Christ who are facing likewise huge health problems?
Well, again, God expects us to be confident. Life's not easy, and he doesn't expect us to be perfect, but he does expect us to be confident, to hold on to his word. I would also say, in addition to staying strong, surround yourself with winners and believers with you who are of like mind. If there are people who are not going to be supportive or going to be doubters, they don't need to be in your huddle when you're preparing for the game. They don't. You got to have, again, back to Rocky, you got to have a trainer. You got to have a support staff that really expects you to win. And God, ultimately, we're obviously going to be the ultimate winners either way, but don't have doubt. Just believe God's got it.
That's wonderful. Jeff, thank you. And may you continue to be fishers of men, and may your family prosper, may your business prosper, and may you continue to be an example to people who will face probably problems of a much lesser magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to Wheaton's Center for Faith, Politics, and Economics podcast. 3 Things with host David Iglesias. Join us again in 2 weeks for a new interview with an accomplished faith, political, and business leader.